capital. And so we brought some experts that will interact. I've been here in Angola for 18 years. I've been also here, and I know all the province, and I know the in-depth. I know the Angola from the in-depth, from north to south. And we have this national freedom movement. We're also working with a technology company that is being empowering this cooperation and this program, that is the peopleware platform, in which all those people who are mostly on the remote province, they might also be enabled to have the same opportunity, though we know that opportunities are not the same comparing to the ones who are in Luanda and those who are in the remote provinces. So am I already in the middle of the time? Yes, I think so. So well, let's go forward. Our leadership on the digital era. Leadership is only worthy when it's changing. In the leadership, it's very important for you to know to transform people, so without being disposable. Like if you are in a program on disposing in the same position, you need to see yourself, because the leadership is one who can replace himself in his own position and attain another positions. And mostly for the foreigners, those who are going to spread or capacity or build capacities, instead they do not do that. We have those routine of transformation, and so this TIS method is bringing the same thing. It's like knowledge transference, and this is the need of the leaders to work on this dynamic of change, of transformation. If you are not the leading transformation, the question is, how many people have you transformed? How many people have you changed? How many people are there and they are like they are affording by themselves? Because for the company I've started, I'm not the very one doing the same job. 7 years later, what are you doing? What are you up to? What's in the digital era in which people who need to be replaced, the artificial intelligence is saying, replacing, taking over companies and jobs, and they say we have up to 20, 45, many jobs we're having now, they won't be there anymore. So things are like growing, but we have to do it in our reality. We are still discussing in the cultural issue, because in Angola it's just like this. Yeah, in Angola we say, this maybe I don't think this one won't work. Come on, we cannot do this. Yeah, it's not good for us. And so we have to change. What are we going to change? It's mind changing. Mind change is not attitude, is culture. And it is through our leaders in the digital era, in which they have other challenges like internet and other technological streams, in which they bring us a very big evolution. And Tech, because it is one of the technology company that is not only for consultancy on the human capital development, but they also have very qualified expert in this technology, and this engagement is amazing. And this we are like launching now. We have celebrate our 10th anniversary, and then we will launch the People A platform, and we'll be dealing and discussing more about this. And so now we need to move people from an uncomfortable area for an area of growth. And they need to have an innovative spirit to work with inspiration, to put their players in a victory position. If you are victorious, you are the one ahead, then all the team needs to be on set, and you need also to be there. I think my time is already over. I'm having only 2 minutes. Okay, my time was cut off. I'll go to a very important. The illiterate of 21st century is not the one who did not go to school. Is the one who cannot write, but that one who cannot learn and relearn and learn and live, to stop learning and start learning. And we were like COVID. We had COVID in the time. We were not used to work from home, but now we're doing it because the digital area is now going up and up. And now, so we need this capacity to work more. We have like some things that are yellow, blue, and so forth. And because, as just I said before, some company or some jobs, they will like be disappearing because people were talking. We think with like the telemarketing, we think that we are talking to someone, but then we're talking to a machine, because there are like self-driving cars and so forth. And then we can also have like the brokers and so forth. So we have like the at the time when we call that the modern times, they were replaced, and people were replaced by automation, and then intelligence will take over our space. So we need to be ready and prepared for this change. So, and mostly this capacity is taking over also even now here in Angola, so that we can work for Angola in, and the leader cannot be too much concerned or very effective concerned if he is not prepared for a war, like we could call like a digital era, because some say Hosanna, and what will I will say, crucify him. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Nayara.
Thank you very much, Nayara. Uh, you still had 10 seconds left. Thank you very much for this capacity of summing up and giving us this global vision on what is a leadership on the digital era, and also showing us your TIS method. And one of the characteristics you said, disruption, disruption method. And with this method, you bring and face and approach actually the challenge of this digital era. So we'll give also, we will have the chance to talk, and not only among us but also with the audience, and then we'll give the floor for the next presentation, that is Antonio for Deloitte. I just want to check the sound. Can you hear me? Okay. It's very interesting, this perspective, and interesting also because I will talk on a very different perspective. Uh, we saw a very an emphasis on the leadership of the organization, but we'll talk on the organization on the competitive market on the digital era. I'd like just to have an assistance. I think it's red. And then I'd like also to thank the invitation and the organization of Angotic. It will be a very short presentation, only 3 images, to focus and emphasize what and I like also to share an opinion on the competitive market of the organization. We are also representing some organization or some multinationals, or like they are mostly affected by the change, just as we saw some examples on this digital era. And this change is mostly on the need of the organizations to act on 3 arenas, on 3 areas that they've changed, and they might even change in 3 perspectives. And one is the geographic location, actually, or the geolocation, is mostly the new digital content. We know the behavior of all the customers and the relations of sales and buy and sales and so forth. It's more globally in a context that the the supply of goods and services is mostly more personalized and or customized, and the organization acting in a different area that we had differently to the one that we had 15 years ago, and also to the one that we had before the pandemic. And we know also that the organization that are working more in partnerships, because the only chance they have to be and access the market that is increasingly growing, and is like 80% of the world population is in South America, in Africa, and Asia. Period. Well, and sometimes we see the organizations, they are mostly focused on the USA and Europe. If we check the behavior and the number of inhabitants and the consumption and the people that need, if we could say in the South Hemisphere, they have a different behavior from very early, like in Africa. The average age is like 18 years. In America is 31 and so forth. And then on the South Africa, so United States is like 40 and something. So we also need to know what is our target, and we have also have our players like Google. Who doesn't know Google? Like we have the net, we have Apple, we have Total, we have Chevron. They are like mostly traditional in the economy and also digital. Either the most digital and the most traditional, they are all affected by the economy and so forth. And also in a context that if we also see that we know like we are more connected, it's mobile and it's unstoppable. So what are we gonna do? This is also a good starting point. I think that's like a prank. Okay. Was it a prank? Okay, but what are we gonna do? We can have like 7 billion smartphones that will be used, and the world population is like 7.8 billion. But because okay, it's changed the reality. So this is the first arena in which things changed. That which companies need to compete in an environment that things changed, and so I will keep on speaking. I don't know whether the time will you will elapse, okay, but still, okay. The other arena in which things also changed. This image is very interesting. This picture is very interesting. The value chain, the value chain that we all know, even in the most traditional like agriculture and industry, it became spread, and because we have too many players now, the bank are mostly confused with the telecommunication business. We also talk on fintech, financial technology, and also in the agriculture and industry. They have to use a lot of stakeholders, and we also saw that 3 weeks ago on the Startup Summit, MEC, that a big part of many of our startups, they were most focused on the agriculture sector, because the agriculture sector needs this technology support, otherwise they want to be competitive and not efficient. And the value chain are mostly spread because there are many players that they divide the value in it, and at the very same time the organization need to continue to engage. And how can I bring a certain value and gain some money and be profitable when I'm daily facing thousands and millions of entrepreneurs that when they use the digital aspect, they are getting points, they are gaining points that will even challenge me. And if we cannot even like join them, sometimes partnership is also good in this arena. And as there in certain sectors in like the telecommunication, and which we have the Angotic, on this spreading like this value chain spread, we can also go against or we can also go over some situations or overcome some situations like some barriers. And with telecommunication we call like the net calls and soft calls and so forth. But we could even go further. But we could even see that everything now is faster, more transactional on the value chain. It's even expanded, exploited, and the traditional operators, you need to see how they're going to compete in this new arena. And the other thing that I could also say that all organization should reflect and adapt, and is mostly on the technology innovation. We need to be in the right places and with a profitable chain. Yeah, also the people that is mostly connected to the technology, otherwise we will lose the race. So there are some companies that they use the technology innovation from the very point. Then some of them are like using the digital processes, and we've also seen some processes mostly on the customers, the collaborators, and so forth, and all the ecosystem. But the most important is also to think on the client, on the definite the beneficiary, because they want everything on the meantime. Today we want to use instead of buying. We want to hire or use instead of to acquire. We want to subscribe instead of giving license. And the companies need to understand that in which point or the advantage they want to be, and how they are going to behave there. So naturally, so there are some other topics that inside like the technology that will assist, and the consumers behavior will also, and other things also, the data, everything is on transaction, the demands that the network can be up to date to deal with millions and billions of transactions, and these things will bring change, and it also change the maturity of our locations. So these are some examples in which technology is is developing. And okay, but still I had another slide again, but we'll just proceed. Just give an example. In Africa there are some services uh, that it's not true that they are like in the north hemisphere, and it brings many players when they think on Africa with location which most of the population live, like Turkey payments, mobile payments, and Africa may also lead on that services, because not only because there's a big number of consumers and there's also big demand. So the operators need to think on this arena and compete, and surely they will win. So that's the end, and okay, to not to go beyond the time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Antonio. I also want to thank the capacity of summing up and also bringing a perspective, a different perspective, but it's also complementary to what was presented at the beginning, mostly focused on the organization, then the characteristic of the leader, but still it reflects what we have, or what the organization behaviors would be. So I'll give also the floor to Diogo, and the challenge is also to bring us some more perspective, or go in depth, or maybe also the capacity of summing up uh, regarding to our topic. I think this is a topic that we should even spend hours and hours to discuss, but then we can also bring it in short. The mic is somehow. Apologies, we cannot hear the speaker. I think we having some sound problems. Okay, now problem solved. We spent a lot of time, part of my time, traveling and assisting some leaderships on the challenge they have been facing, on these challenges they've been facing on their organizations. And it's somehow like ungrateful after these two speakers they presented beautifully, mostly concerned on the corporations, and like the human capital, that is also like the human resource is like the source, the key player of all these elements. And we have also like kind of a lot of information. So what I'd like just to add is mostly to have some time for questions and for some question and answers, is for us also to have some interaction with the audience and to go deep. There are like two or three messages I'd like to emphasize. One is there's always a tendency that we should think that we are too much different to others. I've lived in Angola quite a while. I have some relatives here in Angola and Africa. I am Cape Verdean. My kids were born in Mozambique, so I have relatives here. And sometimes there is a trend of thinking that we are quite different with the others. We are not different. We are all human, and we have a particular specific challenge that with with certain problems that we have to overcome by capacity building on the human, and so we also can check also the other. And so that was the first message. The first message is like there's an opportunity instead of closing ourselves into shell, or instead of shelling us as Angolans aspect, we should also see our different characteristics or the features that we have and bring international practices and trying to customize them to our reality, and also to grow the digital era, that is the very one that we're focusing on this master class. It gives us this opportunity. So we are in an era in which technology is more available, and unfortunately we're not to a level like it's not quite affordable to everyone or to every Angolan, but it's all more accessible to the population if we compare, if we look back 5 years back and so forth. And we believe that in coming years we'll even cover more than people. And we're talking about a population that maybe it might even double the number of inhabitants if we compare to the other locations. And so the opportunity is there. We bring this practice and of the digital era and on this specific context. Yeah, I think that's it. So another issue also, and with other organizations which I work with, and we know that each leader needs to work unpredictability, because we sometimes have also the research and observation from the stakeholders, the external stakeholders and the regulators, and sometimes we have to demand from Unitel, from Movicel and Angola Telecom, and sometimes we need transparency, and this transparency is like a dynamic or demand from the clients that is coming for, because even the customers desire is also demanding, and human capital. Me as a collaborator, I have more demands, and I also demand that my organization should be adequate. And so these the geo location or political locations, and say whatever, when I see and news from chat GPT, and we even say that the robots are going to take over humans, so maybe we become afraid, and sometimes we get even some rooms on the skyscrapers, and so we need to adapt to some mechanisms that were already shared here. So in one way or another, these organizations need to be very well prepared for this unpredictability, for those, so that in the real time they might even react adequately. So I'd like just to give this emphasize in in depth for my intervention. So we will be available for questions and interventions.
Obrigado, Diogo. Na verdade,
Thank you very much, Diogo. We duly noted on the need of that organizations, just as you and their leaders, they need to be equipped with tools and knowledge to maximize not only their actions, but also to get results, not personally but also in the whole. Before I entered that room, I was talking to my colleague, and it was like a kind of coaching. And actually, I did a question and suggested the approach on on this perspective and on this like cultural aspects. And this is also on place this nowadays. How are we going to implement this kind of leadership when we having these cultural aspects that are rooted, like in Angola, not only in Angola, but it's not like a critique to the public sector, but there is an modus operandus that is supported also in the legislation that may bring even this disruption and innovation or like a resistance. But nowadays, apart from these challenges, how are we going to face it? And who says that there are also some pros, customs, habits, and so forth. And another perspective is the vision on the top to be also given on the under level. And what we sometimes see is what sometimes the base can do it, but they cannot even send it up or the upper level. How are we going to face this kind of challenge, mostly on these two perspectives? It's very good when you made this kind of question because we've been having the same experience as well, and we'll be talking of having like this AGT development for development process for AGT. And so when we're talking, because we say that when you're sick you go to the doctor and you make some blood tests and so forth, and after the tests only then you are prescribed a certain therapy. And so when we deal with the digital area, firstly you need to make a diagnosis, and then we bring specific things so that you may also acquire what is the disease that the company is having. We need to understand it's just like a dog. Yeah, sometimes the collar is not there, but we still need to fight because the changes does not happen from a day to night. So like we need to assess the initial assessment. How is the leadership today in our institution and organization? And then we make a set of programs like monthly, every weekend immersion, and then we start doing trainings day and night, and then we do a number of programs, teaching programs for a specific disease of that institution. And then at the end of a year, then we have the ECG efficacy. There is that after that leadership program that was implemented by the TIS method, how effective has changed on the like applying as a leader, not as a boss, but as a leader. And it's possible, yes, when we do a customized service, a customized job that is done, though it's strict, but we can do on the behavior sector for the company. So Antonio, there was also the approach that was mostly on the leadership in that is like engaged to the competitive market. So do these leadership are they the result as a effect of the difficulty to adapt to the reality of the market, or it's only the way they need to deal with the market and the institution? Number one, if I talk it in a broad way or sectors, each organization nowadays, if you know what happened in the past years, it was mostly after COVID, for all the reasons that we know. But the economy, traditional economy, has transformed, and it's also inevitable to talk of. Because the market contents of the organizations, we have multinational organizations, and also here the national, the domestic, and other ones. It's inevitable because the organization leaderships they need to think. They need to change their strategies on how are they going to stand or to deal uh, before challenges. And when we were talking about location, it's not only like the physical address. We it's like where we're going to establish. Sometimes whenever we think, sometimes we think on the continent or or globally, and we think on that every day. And we also saw on the value chain because that's the one that brings resilience towards the organization. There needs to be a physical address, and it also needs to be resilient. And this presence on the value chain, and when we talk about the technological resilience that brings autonomy so that the company may remain also on the market. That is the case of Deloitte. You can even make a survey. Deloitte is 25, 30 years, for 30 years, was like the greatest, like for audit company worldwide. And it was 20 to 30 years back here. They've changed their business score, and 70% of Deloitte job or activity is technology. Is like one of the like what we call like big four due to technology. Everything that they've changed on their core business. So that's a very resilient organization that they do quite a lot, and also they do it with a lot of partnerships. We don't need to be the best to do everything in what we are providing to the market. We just need to have the good partnership, and that's where I focused mostly my presentation on the digital era. So, Joe, in what you've been experiencing when you follow the other leaderships, uh, not only on the perspective, on the Angolan perspective, but also in the countries that we've been in or you've been to, considering this multiculturality, if you allow me to say, what are the biggest challenges on this transformation process? The challenge for leader is mostly on the human factor. It's also a technology congress that you sometimes spend a lot of time to speak with technology. And sometimes, if we want to incorporate technology, integrate technology on what we do and the human factor, if we can motivate the people with the movement that we want them to do and develop, so there's no technology that might even there is no technology that will allow us to develop in a certain sense, either for customers and work here in Angola, and mainly, if you allow me, maybe just we are like organization that work with a lot of people, and with the big fours and services companies, and they have to manage the capital, the human capital, in a good way. And on the KPMG, we are not like the best, but it's just a provocation. We are like one of the biggest. It's just like a small joke here in the panel, and we also need to understand that okay, everyone is a leader. That's the motto. And from the very first day that each one joined the organization, needs to have that idea that he's a leader. And from that very day, you decide what you're gonna do. Are you going to interact with your senior, with your manager, with your partner, and how are you going to integrate technology? And so all of us, or each one, is accountable for whatever decision, and using one of the words just to associate with one of the purpose that is KPMG, that is everywhere in the walls, on the walls. And so also we also bring another thing that is the motto or the motivation, that each one will know to do their work and their job, knowing that I'm a leader of myself, but I'm a part of a team or a member of the team, a team member, and I need to. And sometimes it's like easier to implement any activity like for us that are international organization, and mostly when we talk on the public sector, I deeply believe that we can also work whoever is working in any position or any department is a leader of his unit of that entity, and from that very moment, if they are available to get to the next position, to challenge and even to discuss with the management, and also think what's the organization, the nation objectives, we are also contributing for the development. So this component of working on people and empowering them from the very first day uh, has been very as has been bringing some difference in the specific point for each and every one on the organization. Thank you very much, and we are quite beyond time, I think, but we are still giving to ask the organization the understanding of the organization, because we started 20 minutes after 2. So in this Angotic spirit, because it's an interaction between the panelists and the audience, I will give the floor to the audience. Um, if you can at least address 2 or 3 questions, maybe one. Actually, Angotic, this is what Angotic is. We have to interact and to cooperate. Thank you very much. Please, microphone. Good afternoon, everyone. I heard on the leadership, on the abstract, and on the location and the audience as well. My question is, who is going to lead in the future? If it's the lead of today, or if one today we have to learn to stop learning and learn again, how are we going to deal with the future? Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Gonzalez. Uh, I think we'll allow first you address the questions, and only then we will answer, so that we can save time. Is there any more question? So whoever want to address a question should come forward to the mic and address the question. Fabian Canella from the which is method. My question is, what's the importance of the human capital when it is aligned to the technology, and what's the way to align competence and technology, and when we look to the national competency and also the conditions that are available in the country. One more question. If there is no more question, I will give the floor to the speakers. I can see the organizer, one of my colleagues from the organization, but then I should also address another question, and then you can also answer all the questions, and then we'll close. My question is very simple. What's the recommendation? Like after the answer, what is the recommendation that you give that today the organization could be able to transform in what we want regarding to leaders or on corporative leadership on the digital area? Actually, we need to take advantage that we are having these consultants. Well, okay, actually, I'd like to thank and congratulate you for your questions. I also want to share another tendency. Yeah, okay, that we need to work, and I work with very cooperative, corporation, international corporations. And one of the challenges is how to implement simplicity. What simplicity on people, on talent, and how do I have some intermediaries, intermediates also to work and also partners, how to diminish the number of people in high positions and the one on the low positions. And on the digital era, we are feeling that the technology companies or the ICT companies have been like on the pioneers on the application of these principles, not only on the ecosystem of communication innovation and the startups on the growth. They are working more effectively, and the number of governance structure is like quite less, and the organization they also have the way of keeping this practice into themselves. So as a good consultant, I know that my question is not the same for everyone, because we need to make a survey for each company, but my answer is normally simplicity for each and every process, and only then the magic will happen, and then the people will even become better and better every day. And then the other question is like, who is like the will be the leader in the future? It will be a certain robot. Well, I'm just joking, but if we can also say that it is ESG, that whatever is diversity and inclusion, that organization that will be leading are the ones that will like retain the ecosystem, and having a people panel with several people, diverse on structures, diverse on culture, diverse on age and gender. Mostly like the European that are like mostly aged people, but here we are like having younger people. Are we going to put like the old person to work with the young person from the college, and so it needs to be a mixed one. The leader needs to be mixed, but there will be a leader. So Yara will be like the leader in the future, and also the capital, the human capital, and what is the recommendation you leave. I don't know whether the recommendation will also be the same. Well, on maybe acceleration programs for leadership is also very important. For on the TIS method, we are already having some leadership that we are having like young people training so that they may become leaders in the future. Then we mentor, we coach them, and continuous training to capacity building. We don't need just to coach or to train. We need to make a program and reprogram. And then that's one of the leadership program that we normally do, not only for the local ones, but we do also for the international ones. And so that if he's not able, he's not enabled to transfer the transference, or to transfer the knowledge, so it needs to be done so that he may also have this knowledge transference. So on the labor competence, we normally apply this behavior profile, and we see that 60% of the Angolan population is stable. So we need also to unstable people, because they are stable for the history. Because if you go back to the history, the Africans were not stable, but then after colonization they became stable, and from that point till now they are like stable. And then we have some professionals that they cannot think, they do not think logically. So in our company we help people think. It's not because they cannot think, it's because their IQ is like their IQ is higher, but they are not able to think. And every day we need to tell them do, and whenever we tell them not to do, they don't do. And so it's like a programming, they are set. And so it means that we need to map their behavior, thinking also on the tribe, because the one from Bakongo and the one from Malange and so forth, and we are doing it through surveys. We've been spending years of surveys, so we're having very important data, not only in the micro but also in the micro, on the micro and macro and micro. And so this is like skills. It's not technical. Sometimes it's behavioral and cultural, and we need to focus on that. And sometimes the companies put it aside, and then they just say technical training, but they should mostly do like 70-30 on the behavior, because the one people just they will just delay your training because they will need their self development. So the recommendation, transformation will impact transformation. So TIS method. I think organization later on will charge for this mark for this advertisement. Well, to not waste any more time, I believe I agree with all that was said, but there being just two aspects. The very first one, on the digital era, technology has come closer to the company strategies, and this impacts on the human capital, like people who can read better this particularity on what the company can do better to be more profitable and stronger and so forth. And those who can do that inside the organization, they will have more opportunities, despite of being more technical or more with soft skills and so forth. So that's inevitable. So another very important, if we've talked about behavior, people have changed. Collaborators, not customers, but collaborators. Because when we live to an economy that we call it gig economy, that the collaborator believes that he might spend even most of his time working not only from the office, like not being syncing on the office, and but it can do somewhere else. It also brings another challenge for the companies, like the challenge of care and balance and so forth. And so, going and answer the first question, naturally leaders will be, and I believe the on the flexibility answer, some they are very difficult words to find in a person. So one who will lead this process are those who will know how to balance quite well these features. Because there is one thing: if companies do not have the allocation precisely, they want to be competitive and being profitable and have any shareholder in the meantime. So if there's no company, there's no leaders for anything. So the leaders in the future are the very ones that can even take all the network of collaborators to the future, and also may be available and train also. So I agree with all the comments on the soft skills and so forth. So thank you very much. We should even spend hours and hours here to discuss on the different perspectives. There are the bilateral and related issues, but Angotic is this very one that we can discuss it. The topic, thank you very much. A big applause for all of us. And I can say that this is the end, like a part for a part of our panel, uh, emphasizing that other discussion might be done, will be done outside the room, and so good for all of us, and see you next time.
calhar é melhor sentar aí. Que terminava às 4, não é?